The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Queen Elizabeth sat in her private study, staring at the document that would change everything. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the medical report for the third time. The words remained the same, but their meaning felt heavier with each reading. Dr. Harrison had been the royal family's physician for over 20 years. His reputation was impeccable, his discretion absolute. When he requested an urgent private meeting with the Queen 3 days ago, she knew it wasn't about routine matters. The test results he presented were conclusive and shocking. The Queen's youngest grandson, Prince William's son, Prince George, had been experiencing unusual symptoms for months. What the family initially dismissed as growing pains and childhood fatigue had revealed something extraordinary through advanced genetic testing. The 12-year-old prince carried a rare genetic marker that occurred in less than 1 in 10 million people worldwide. This genetic anomaly wasn't harmful. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Medical researchers had discovered that individuals with this particular genetic sequence possessed enhanced cognitive abilities, superior physical coordination, and remarkably advanced problem-solving skills. The condition had only been documented in fewer than 50 people. Throughout recorded history, Dr. Harrison explained that Prince George's recent academic achievements weren't just the result of excellent tutoring and natural intelligence. His ability to master complex mathematical concepts typically taught to university students, his photographic memory, and his unusual talent for languages all stem from this genetic gift. The Queen closed her eyes and thought about her great-grandson. George had always been special, but she attributed his remarkable abilities to good breeding and proper education. Learning that he possessed what scientists were calling a superhuman genetic enhancement changed everything. The implications were staggering. If the public learned about George's condition, it would spark debates about genetic superiority, create unrealistic expectations for the young prince, and potentially attract unwanted scientific attention. The royal family had always dealt with intense scrutiny, but this would be unprecedented. Queen Elizabeth picked up her secure phone and called Prince William. The conversation would be difficult but necessary. As George's father, William needed to understand what they were dealing with before any decisions were made about revealing this information to the world. The weight of the crown had never felt heavier than it did in that moment. As the Queen prepared to share news that would forever change how the world viewed the British royal family, Prince William's hands shook as he ended the call with his grandmother. The revelation about his son George left him speechless and confused. He immediately called his wife Catherine, asking her to meet him in their private chambers at Kensington Palace urgently. Catherine arrived within minutes, her face full of concern. She had never heard William sound so shaken. When he explained what the Queen had told him, Catherine sank into the nearest chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the news. "What does this mean for George?" Catherine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What does this mean for our family?" William began pacing the room, his mind racing through the possibilities. Their son wasn't just academically gifted or naturally talented. According to the medical experts, George possessed genetic capabilities that placed him in an entirely different category of human potential. The couple spent the next 2 hours discussing the situation. They recalled recent incidents that now made perfect sense. Last month, George had corrected his history tutor's explanation of complex political events from the 18th century, providing details that weren't in any of his textbooks. When asked where he learned such information, George simply said he figured it out by connecting different pieces of historical evidence. 2 weeks ago, during a family game of chess, George had defeated his grandfather, King Charles, in just 12 moves. Charles, an experienced player, was stunned by the sophisticated strategy his grandson employed. George had learned chess only 6 months earlier. Catherine remembered the incident at George's school sports day. Her son had performed exceptionally in every event, not through training or practice, but through what appeared to be an intuitive understanding of optimal physical movement and strategy. Other parents had joked about George being superhuman, not knowing how close to the truth they were. The ethical questions were overwhelming. Did they have the right to keep this information secret? Would hiding George's abilities prevent him from reaching his full potential? On the other hand, revealing the truth could subject their son to a lifetime of scientific study, unrealistic expectations, and public pressure unlike anything the royal family had ever experienced. William called the Queen back and requested an emergency family meeting. This decision couldn't be made by just two people. The entire senior royal family needed to understand the situation and participate in determining how to proceed. The meeting was scheduled for the following evening at Buckingham Palace. Only the most trusted family members would attend: the Queen, King Charles, Prince William, Catherine, and the Queen's private secretary. No staff members would be present, and all security protocols would be enhanced to ensure complete privacy. As William looked out the window at the peaceful palace gardens, he wondered if this would be the last normal day his family would ever experience. Once this secret was revealed, nothing would ever be the same again. The private dining room at Buckingham Palace had never hosted a more consequential family meeting. King Charles arrived early, his face grave with the weight of what they were about to discuss. The Queen entered precisely at 7 o'clock, followed by William and Catherine, both looking exhausted from a sleepless night of worry. Dr. Harrison joined them to provide detailed medical explanations. He brought with him a thick folder containing George's test results, comparative studies, and research papers about the genetic condition. The scientific evidence was undeniable and fascinating. "Your Majesty," Dr. Harrison began, addressing the Queen directly, "Prince George's genetic profile indicates capabilities that extend far beyond normal human parameters. His brain processes information at a rate approximately 3 times faster than average. His muscle coordination and reflexes test at levels typically seen in professional athletes, despite minimal training." King Charles leaned forward, his expression serious. "Doctor, what are the long-term implications? Will these abilities continue to develop as George grows older?" Dr. Harrison nodded gravely. "Based on the limited research available on similar cases, these capabilities will likely strengthen significantly during adolescence and early adulthood. By age 18, Prince George may possess intellectual and physical abilities that could be considered genuinely superhuman." The family sat in stunned silence as the full implications sank in. Catherine was the first to speak. "We need to consider George's well-being above everything else. How do we protect him while allowing him to develop naturally?" The Queen had been quietly contemplating the broader consequences. "This affects more than just George," she said slowly. "This impacts the entire institution of the monarchy. If the public learns that a future king possesses superhuman abilities, it could fundamentally change how people view the royal family's role in society." William had been dreading this conversation, but he knew it was necessary. "There's something else we need to discuss. George has been asking questions about why he's different from other children. He's becoming aware that his abilities aren't normal. We can't hide this from him much longer." The family spent the next 3 hours debating every possible approach. They could attempt to keep the information secret indefinitely, hoping George would learn to conceal his abilities. They could reveal the truth gradually to select individuals and institutions, or they could make a public announcement and deal with the consequences openly. Each option carried enormous risks. Secrecy might be impossible to maintain as George's abilities became more pronounced. Gradual disclosure could lead to leaks and rumors that would be harder to control than a planned announcement. Public revelation would subject George to intense scrutiny, but might also allow him to develop his potential without the burden of deception. Dr. Harrison provided one final piece of crucial information. "Your Majesties, there's something else you should know. My research suggests that this genetic condition might be hereditary. Prince George's future children could potentially inherit these same abilities." The implications of this revelation were staggering. They weren't just dealing with one exceptional child, but potentially an entire lineage of individuals with superhuman capabilities. The decisions they made now would affect not only George, but generations of future monarchs. As the meeting concluded, the Queen made a decision that surprised everyone. "We will tell George the truth about his condition first. He deserves to understand what's happening to him. After that, we'll decide together how to proceed with the public." The family agreed to reconvene in 1 week, after George had been informed about his unique genetic gifts and had time to process the information. The most difficult conversation in royal family history was yet to come. George sat across from his parents in the comfortable sitting room of their private quarters, unaware that the conversation about to unfold would change his understanding of himself forever. William and Catherine had spent days preparing for this moment, but no amount of planning could ease the difficulty of what they needed to explain. "George, do you remember when you went to see Dr. Harrison last month for those special tests?" Catherine began gently. The 12-year-old nodded, his intelligent eyes alert and curious. "The blood tests and the brain scans? You said it was just to make sure I was healthy." William took a deep breath. "The tests showed that you are perfectly healthy, but they also revealed something very special about you. Something that makes you quite different from other people." George's expression became more serious. "Different how?" "I know I'm good at school and sports, but lots of kids are smart and athletic." Catherine moved closer to her son. "George, the doctors discovered that you have a very rare genetic condition. It's not harmful at all. In fact, it gives you abilities that are far beyond what most people can do." For the next hour, William and Catherine carefully explained the test results. They told George about his enhanced cognitive processing, his superior physical coordination, and his exceptional problem-solving capabilities. They explained that fewer than 50 people in recorded history had possessed these same genetic traits. George listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated the very intelligence they were describing. "So when I solved that mathematics problem that stumped my tutor, it wasn't just because I studied hard?" "That's right," William confirmed. "Your brain can process and connect information in ways that are genuinely extraordinary. The mathematical concepts you understand are typically taught to university students, not 12-year-olds. The young prince was quiet for several minutes, processing this revelation. Finally, he looked at his parents with a maturity that seemed beyond his years. "Is this why I sometimes feel like I understand things that others don't? Why I can see patterns and solutions that my teachers miss?" Catherine nodded, fighting back tears at her son's remarkable composure. "Yes, sweetheart. You've been dealing with abilities that you didn't understand. That must have been confusing and sometimes lonely." George's next question caught them off guard. "Do other people know about this? Will I have to pretend to be normal for the rest of my life?" William realized that his son had already begun to understand the broader implications. "That's something our family is still deciding. We wanted you to know the truth first, because this affects you more than anyone else." The conversation continued for another hour as George asked increasingly sophisticated questions about his condition, its implications and potential consequences. His parents were amazed by his analytical approach to processing this life-changing information. "I've always felt different," George admitted finally. "Not better than other people, just different. Sometimes I would solve problems and not understand how I knew the answers. It's actually a relief to know there's a reason for it." That evening, George asked to speak with his great-grandmother, the Queen. Their conversation lasted well into the night, with George demonstrating a level of wisdom and maturity that astounded even the experienced monarch. "Great-grandmother, I understand that this information could cause problems for our family and for the country," George said during their talk. "But I also think that hiding who I am might be more difficult than being honest about it." The Queen was struck by her great-grandson's insight. "What do you think we should do, George?" The young prince considered the question carefully. "I think we should tell the truth, but in a way that helps people understand that I'm still just a person. I have unusual abilities, but I still need to learn and grow like everyone else." His response revealed a level of emotional intelligence that complemented his enhanced cognitive abilities. The royal family had been prepared for many possible reactions from George, but his calm acceptance and thoughtful analysis exceeded all expectations. As the Queen tucked George into bed that night, she realized that the family's decision had essentially been made. If this remarkable young man was ready to face the world honestly, then the royal family would support him completely. The royal communications team had handled numerous sensitive announcements throughout their careers, but nothing had prepared them for this challenge. Sir David Morrison, the Queen's communications secretary, sat in his office reviewing the draft statement that would soon shock the world. The family had decided to make the announcement through a carefully planned press release, followed by a brief televised statement from Prince William. The goal was to present the information factually and scientifically, while emphasizing George's humanity and the family's commitment to protecting his normal development. Dr. Harrison had been working with leading geneticists and medical experts to prepare supporting documentation. The scientific community needed to validate the claims before skeptics could dismiss the announcement as publicity-seeking or delusion. Independent verification was crucial for credibility. Meanwhile, security protocols at all royal residences were being quietly enhanced. Intelligence services had briefed the family about potential risks following the announcement. There were concerns about scientific interest becoming intrusive, media attention becoming overwhelming, and possible threats from individuals who might view George's abilities as threatening or unnatural. The palace staff had been informed that a major announcement was forthcoming, but only the most senior advisors knew the specific details. Rumors were already circulating among the household staff that something significant was developing, but the true nature of the news remained protected. George continued his regular school schedule, though his teachers had been discreetly informed that changes might be necessary soon. The young prince had requested that his education continue as normally as possible, regardless of public reaction to the announcement. Catherine spent hours on the phone with child psychologists and experts in gifted education, seeking advice about protecting George's emotional well-being during the media storm that would inevitably follow. The family was determined to shield him from the most intrusive aspects of public attention, while still being honest about his condition. King Charles had been consulting with constitutional experts about the broader implications. If George's abilities were as significant as the medical reports suggested, there were questions about how this might affect the monarchy's role in the future. Some advisors worried about public reaction to the idea of a superhuman king, while others believed it could strengthen public support for the institution. The announcement was scheduled for the following Monday at 3 p.m. London time. This timing would allow maximum global media coverage while giving the family the weekend to make final preparations. The palace had arranged for simultaneous translation into multiple languages and had prepared detailed background materials for international media outlets. William practiced his statement repeatedly, working with speech coaches to ensure the right tone. The message needed to be serious enough to convey the significance of the news, while remaining warm and accessible to help the public connect with George as a person, rather than viewing him as a scientific curiosity. Sunday evening arrived with unprecedented security measures in place around all royal properties. The family gathered for what they knew would be their last private dinner before everything changed. George seemed remarkably calm, even excited about the prospect of finally being able to be completely honest about his abilities. "I've been thinking about tomorrow," George told his family during dinner. "I know some people might react strangely, but I hope this helps other children who feel different understand that being unique isn't something to hide." The Queen smiled at her great-grandson's mature perspective. "George, tomorrow you'll show the world something truly extraordinary. Not just your abilities, but your character and wisdom." As the family prepared for bed, each member knew they were on the verge of making history. The announcement would either be remembered as a moment when the royal family courageously shared an amazing truth, or as the beginning of challenges they couldn't yet imagine. Outside the palace walls, the world continued its normal routine, completely unaware that Monday would bring news that would change everything people thought they knew about human potential and the British royal family. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable sunshine streaming through the palace windows. George woke up early and spent time reading in his room, appearing more composed than any of the adults who would soon deliver the most extraordinary announcement in modern royal history. At exactly 3 p.m., news outlets around the world received a press release that caused immediate chaos in newsrooms everywhere. The headline read, "Royal Family Announces Prince George Possesses Rare Genetic Enhancement Granting Extraordinary Human Capabilities." Within minutes, major news networks were interrupting regular programming. Social media platforms crashed temporarily as millions of people shared and discussed the news. The palace switchboard was overwhelmed with calls from journalists, scientists, and curious members of the public. Prince William appeared on television precisely at 3:30 p.m., looking directly into the camera with quiet dignity. "Today our family is sharing information about my son George that is both personal and profound. Recent medical testing has revealed that George possesses a rare genetic condition that enhances his cognitive and physical abilities far beyond normal human parameters. He continued, "This is not science fiction or exaggeration. Leading medical experts have independently verified that George's genetic profile grants him capabilities that occur in fewer than 1 in 10 million people. We are sharing this information because we believe in honesty and transparency, and because George deserves to grow up without the burden of hiding who he truly is." The statement lasted only 8 minutes, but its impact was immediate and global. Within an hour, Royal Superhuman was trending worldwide on social media. News commentators struggled to process the implications while scientists began calling for access to the research data. Dr. Harrison held a separate press conference 2 hours later, presenting the scientific evidence to a room full of skeptical but increasingly convinced medical journalists. He displayed brain scans, genetic analysis results, and comparative performance data that supported every claim made in the royal statement. The public reaction was unlike anything in recent memory. Some people expressed excitement and wonder at the revelation. Others voiced concern about genetic inequality and the implications of superhuman royalty. Religious groups debated whether George's abilities were natural or divine in origin. George watched the news coverage with his family, occasionally asking thoughtful questions about the reactions they were seeing. "Why do some people seem angry about this?" he asked his parents during one particularly heated television debate. Catherine explained gently, "Some people are afraid of things they don't understand, sweetheart. Change can be frightening, even when it's not harmful." By evening, the palace had received over 10,000 emails and letters. The vast majority were supportive, with many parents of gifted children expressing gratitude for the royal family's openness. However, there were also messages from conspiracy theorists, religious extremists, and individuals demanding proof or claiming the announcement was fabricated. International reactions varied significantly. Some world leaders expressed fascination and support, while others remained diplomatically silent. Scientific communities in multiple countries requested collaboration opportunities, eager to study George's condition with hopes of understanding human genetic potential. The most touching responses came from children and teenagers who had felt isolated by their own exceptional abilities. Letters poured in from young people who had struggled with feeling different, thanking George for showing them that extraordinary capabilities didn't have to be hidden or minimized. That evening, George insisted on reading some of the supportive letters himself. One message from a 13-year-old girl in Scotland particularly moved him. "Dear Prince George, I've always been the smartest kid in my class and felt weird about it. Thank you for showing me that being different can be something to be proud of instead of something to hide." As the family prepared for bed on this historic day, they reflected on the overwhelming response. The announcement had been successful in its primary goal, presenting the truth honestly while maintaining George's dignity and humanity. However, they all understood that this was only the beginning. The real challenge would be navigating the ongoing attention and expectations, while ensuring that George could continue developing as both an exceptional individual and a normal child. Outside the palace, media crews maintained their vigil, knowing that the world would be watching every aspect of the royal family's life with even greater intensity than ever before. 3 months after the announcement that shocked the world, life had settled into a new rhythm for the royal family. The initial media frenzy had gradually calmed, replaced by a sustained but manageable level of international interest in Prince George's development and activities. George had become an unexpected symbol of hope for parents of gifted children worldwide. The palace received thousands of letters weekly from families sharing their own stories of children with exceptional abilities. Many expressed gratitude that the royal family's openness had helped reduce the stigma around being intellectually different. Several positive developments had emerged from the revelation. Leading universities had established scholarship programs for children with similar genetic profiles, though none as pronounced as George's had yet been identified. Medical research into human genetic potential had received unprecedented funding from governments and private organizations eager to understand the mechanisms behind such capabilities. George himself had adapted remarkably well to his new public status. He continued attending school, though security measures had been enhanced and his schedule modified to accommodate increased public interest. His teachers reported that knowing the truth about his abilities had actually improved his academic experience. as they could now provide appropriate challenges without fearing they were pushing him too hard. The young prince had requested permission to correspond directly with some of the children who had written to him. Under careful supervision, he had begun exchanging letters with several young people around the world who faced similar challenges with exceptional abilities. These connections had become a source of great joy and personal growth for George. International collaborations had developed between the palace and various scientific institutions. George participated in carefully designed studies that would help researchers understand human potential, while protecting his privacy and normal development. The knowledge gained from these studies was being shared freely with the global scientific community. The constitutional implications of George's abilities had been thoroughly examined by legal experts. Rather than creating problems, his condition had actually strengthened public support for the monarchy. Opinion polls showed that most people viewed his genetic gifts as evidence that the royal family was uniquely qualified to lead, while others appreciated the family's honesty and transparency in sharing such personal information. Religious leaders had largely embraced George's condition as evidence of human diversity and potential, rather than viewing it as threatening or unnatural. Many sermons had focused on the importance of using exceptional gifts responsibly and for the benefit of others, messages that resonated strongly with George's own developing sense of purpose. The most remarkable change had been in George himself. Free from the burden of hiding his abilities, he had become more confident and engaged. His parents noticed that he seemed happier and more at peace with himself than he had been before the revelation. During a recent interview, George had spoken with wisdom far beyond his years about his hopes for the future. "I want people to understand that having unusual abilities doesn't make someone better than others," he had said. "It just means you have different ways to help people and contribute to the world." The Queen, now in her final years, often reflected on how this experience had brought the family closer together and strengthened their bond with the public. The decision to reveal George's condition had been risky, but it had ultimately demonstrated the royal family's commitment to honesty and service. As George celebrated his 13th birthday, surrounded by family and a small group of close friends, the future looked bright. The boy who had once felt isolated by his exceptional abilities now understood that his genetic gifts came with both opportunities and responsibilities. The world continued to watch with fascination and hope as this remarkable young prince grew into his extraordinary potential, knowing that the future monarchy would be guided by someone truly unique in human history. The royal family had not only survived the revelation of George's superhuman abilities, but had emerged stronger, more relevant, and more beloved than ever before. The story that began with shocking medical test results had become a tale of courage, honesty, and the power of embracing what makes each person special. Prince George's journey was just beginning, but he was no longer walking that path alone.